Hello friends, welcome back to MS Recap. The film begins with a young man named Rick running behind his school bus because he was late for school today. The bus stops at a distance and Rick collides with it. He collides with the stop sign and even the door while boarding the bus. Today he was unlucky. As he enters the bus, his classmates were not letting him sit with them. Everyone was saying sorry. "We can't let you sit with us." Then he sees his friend who offers to sit with him after sitting on the bus. He sees behind where a girl was sitting with her friend. She was the girl whom Rick likes. She is his crush named Jill. But when Rick's friend sees him, he asks him to stop because he will never get her. She already has a friend, and then there was a science trip in their school. Reaching there, they see a bird sitting on a branch. Jill was watching the bird and Rick clicks its picture with his camera. The bird catches fire because of the flash, but none has seen it. When the burnt bird falls down, Rick was blowing the fire with his foot. In all this, his foot hits Jill's friend, and he says, being furious, "How dare you to hit me?" Jill comes in between and stops them. Meanwhile, a CEO of a scientific place also arrives. He asks him to end the fight while putting a hand on his shoulder. Everyone was moving forward, but Rick notices the CEO isn't feeling well. He is coughing and bleeding as well. Rick asks, "Are you fine?" He says, "Yes, I am fine. This isn't a big deal to bleed." The CEO asks Rick how are his parents. Rick tells him they are no more than the students move forward and reach near a chamber in which there were dragonflies, and a dragonfly chases Rick. It bites his neck, and when Rick reaches home, we discover he lives with his old uncle and aunt. He was facing problems while walking and his body was swelled. Then his uncle asks him to feed the fish. As he opens the aquarium, he starts vomiting. He vomits there and then sits in his room. His uncle comes behind and tells him the mood swings are normal as you are getting elder. Rick falls on the bed and goes into a sound sleep. The CEO is shown showing his inventions and sits on his electrical chair. Then he goes through some electrical shocks. A man was standing nearby and he holds his hand, so his soul transfers to the CEO. Now the CEO has a long life. Everyone gets scared to see this, and then Rick is shown coming back to his senses. He turns on his computer and starts searching on Google. Dragonfly bite means he wants to see what happened after the dragonfly bite. He was feeling changes in his body. Then he receives a notification of adding as a friend by Professor X. There was a message as well that I have all the answers and don't find me, I will reach you. Meanwhile, he sees his father's picture. He was watching it and missing his father. He says, "Father, you left very soon." And the next morning, there was a science fair in their school. There was a guest named Stephen Hawking, and Rick also goes there. He says, "Look at me, I even can't walk and I want a life like you. I wish I could visit the place I want." The students are now separated, and Rick was walking. He saw Jill and became engrossed in her. Due to it, he collides with Jill's friend. He says to walk carefully. He moves forward and starts drinking water and places his hand on a board, but it sticks with the board. He releases his hand and observes small hairs on his hand. His hands are sticky, and when he tries to release his hand, the board-type box sticks with his hand. He hits Jill's friend because of a jerk. There was a fight, and during the fight, Rick falls on the wheelchair of Stephen Hawking's. Due to it, he also becomes injured and falls into the beehive. The bees come outside, and there was a great hustle and bustle in the students. Rick moves out and notices that he can walk on the building. He even can jump with the sticky hands, and his body has become flexible. He looks like a Spider-Man and finds a speeding truck on the road. There was an old lady and her dog in front of the truck. Rick moves to help them and pushes the old lady and her dog immediately. The truck also stops, and everyone was watching him surprisingly. Rick thinks maybe they are admiring me, but when he turns, he finds the lady is stuck in a dumper, and her dog was also standing near her but also hanged. Rick goes to his home, and as he enters the house, he finds his uncle and his friend there. His uncle throws a nail toward him and Rick catches it easily. His uncle says, "Rick, you seem changed," and he was also answering him quickly. For experimenting, he attacks Rick and hits him with a knife. But the knife bends and nothing happens to Rick, and they discover Rick has superpowers. Rick notices the strange voices from the nearby house. And this is Jill's house, and she comes out as her friend was coming to pick her up. While leaving, she says to Rick, "I will go on a drive with you as well." Rick innocently sees his cycle, that how I will take her for a drive on my cycle. Then his cycle falls down and breaks. Rick has no hope of meeting Jill as he has no other source for taking her on a drive. Rick reaches home and receives the video call from Professor X. Then the video call disconnects, and there was an ad that we will give you a loan for a car. Rick becomes happy and goes to the bank for taking a loan with his uncle and aunt. Meanwhile, the robbers arrive and start robbing the bank. Rick moves out and sees a crowd. There was a small monkey showing its tricks. There was his uncle's body nearby. He runs to him and see, but thankfully he was alive. Then his uncle asks him, "Rick, are you a responsible boy?" Rick says no. "I don't know." A medical team arrives and shifts Rick's uncle to the hospital. The CEO is shown in his office and his assistant arrives. Here, The condition of the CEO wasn't well and he was feeling weak. He holds his assistant's hand and becomes powerful while taking her life. Then he hides her dead body in the cupboard. Rick is shown with his uncle and then he thinks to meet Professor X. He saw his face and when he goes to meet him, Professor X takes him to the school for special kids. And Professor X was telling Rick that he is a special kid. He tells him that he has many powers and even can fly while using them. Professor X was also in a wheelchair and meets his wife. And she was also in a wheelchair and they start talking. Then his wife brings a small baby in front who wasn't looking a boy but seemed a toy. He was also sitting in a wheelchair and brought his small hands toward his brain. Then he flies Professor X in the air while performing telekinesis. Later, his wife is shown in front of Rick and says, "You have come to this school without a costume. If you want to be a superhero, you have to design a costume for yourself." Rick designs his costume that was of green color with a black dragonfly on it. He got this idea because of being bitten by the dragonfly and then he moves to the roof. He was sitting there but a man with a blue costume arrives and says, "Stand up from there, this is my place." Rick says, "Come, we can talk and sit together." Rick goes to an office for a job interview and starts showing punches in his costume but the boss wasn't impressed by him. The man arrives and says there are police outside the university in which they study. Rick disappears and the CEO has arrived at the place where the kids study while wearing a black and red costume with a container on his arm. Now he has come here for taking youth's blood, the serum with which he will stay young, and Rick also reaches there in a dragonfly costume. Now there is a fight between them and Jill was also watching all this. Their fight increases and the CEO throws blades toward him. Luckily, his costume was so powerful that he doesn't become injured. His life was out of danger. Later, the fight ends because the CEO leaves secretly. Jill is shown moving out of the theater at night, so Rick chases her and tries to talk to her. And Jill came here for the movie audition. Rick asks her how is she, while giving her flowers, and Jill says just this: "I thought you want to talk about something else." Rick doesn't say anything as he was feeling shy. Then she leaves even though she doesn't know who is the man in the dragonfly costume. She likes the man in the dragonfly costume and was impressed by him. As she moves forward, some evil people tease her. As Rick sees this, he again comes in his dragonfly getup. He saves Jill while fighting the evil people and Jill sees him with love, like she was thanking him. On another side, the CEO is shown researching in his house. He discovers he has to take 47,000 lives to be immortal. He has to take their powers and then he can't die. The CEO starts working on it. Rick is shown who has invited Jill to her home at a party. Jill arrives and becomes friends with Rick's aunt. She was telling her that she feels an attachment to the dragonfly man. "I appear to like him." Meanwhile, Jill's friend and uncle arrive. On another side, Rick is shown coming to his room while wearing the dragonfly costume. Before he changes his costume, the CEO arrives and he has come to see him. He doubts that Rick is the dragonfly man and Rick hides on his room's roof. The CEO sees the upside but he hides in a drawer, and as the CEO was finding him, he was tricking him. The CEO goes downstairs being tired, then enters Rick, who was coming inside after changing clothes. Here, the CEO notices wounds on Rick's hands and lips. He asks him where he is coming from and Rick says, "I am coming after a fight with a boy." The CEO suspects that Rick is a dragonfly but Rick ignores him. Then Jill's friend left and Rick and Jill talked about dragonflies together. Here, the CEO arrives in his black and red costume and his name is Hourglass and he tries to attack them. He says, "I have to take the life of 1,000 people," and tries to move forward, but Rick was about to attack him but then fell down being slipped. Then Hourglass goes to their aunt and takes her life. She dies here and Rick's uncle is shown in the hospital and he returns to his senses. The doctor has strictly forbidden to give him bad news, but another doctor tells him that your wife is dead and her funeral will be in the morning. Her husband was also in the funeral, and he moves inside a coffin to live with his wife. But he doesn't know that it is not his wife's coffin, but his wife's coffin was coming. Some people were bringing the coffin, but the door of the coffin opened and his wife fell down. There was the fire where his wife fell and she burned in the fire. After a while, Rick is depressed and sitting alone in his house, and has made his house dirty. He also has a beard now, and then his uncle and Rick's friend are shown at his house. Here, his uncle gives him a ring and asks him to do what is written on this ring. You have to live according to it. The words written on the ring were honor, dignity, pride, commitment, duty, and health care. Rick says, "I know I have to follow them, and now I also want to be a superhero. I don't know what to do," and everyone was worried because of it. Hourglass said that he would go to a ceremony where there would be thousands of people, and he will take their lives to become strong. Meanwhile, there is news on TV. There will be a convention and there will be thousands of people. Rick discovers this is the place where the incident will take place. He moves there and he doesn't know that the CEO is Hourglass. He asks the CEO who is Hourglass. He sees around and sees a monk talking to the kids and says to Rick, "There he is." Rick goes and beats the monk, and during this, the CEO runs from there. As he moves out, He has started his electrical chair and has thrown the roof at Rick. He was in the dragonfly costume and Rick removes the roof from him while using his power. There was a strange thing, the roof again falls on him. Poor Rick. Hourglass was about to throw the blades at Rick, but Jill comes in between to save Rick. She was hit with the blade and Rick doesn't understand what to do, and he goes upstairs where Hourglass is on the chair. He makes Jill fine while using the chair. Jill thanks him, then they see on the screen only 10 seconds were left, then Hourglass will be immortal. They think to stop him and Hourglass was throwing blades at him, but Rick escapes through the backflip. Then he brings fuel to him that explodes. Here, the CEO dies, and because of the strong costume of the dragonfly, he was saved. On another side, Jill also falls at a far distance because of the explosion. Now Rick and Jill were falling down from the building together, and falling down, Jill sees the ring in Rick's hand. So she discovers Rick belongs to a powerful family. They confess their love for each other here. Here the movie ends. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.